In this class, we're going to work with yokes by using pattern making or pattern drafting techniques. We'll use the 1-dot bodice, the 2-dot bodice. We'll work with gathers, notches, and so on. So let's get to it. We start by making a copy of this 1-dot bodice. So we trace our pattern onto dotted paper all the way around. And there you have it. Next, it's really a matter of figuring out the style line. We'll do something a little interesting. And I'm going to use my French curve to help me shape this yoke. And we'll do something like this. Next, we're going to cut the pattern out. We've cut the pattern out, and now we're going to separate the yoke from the rest of the body. And that's pretty much it. Now, this pattern, this bodice, has no seam allowance. So when you cut this in the fabric, make sure that you add all the proper seam allowance. Otherwise, it'll never work. So add seam allowance before you cut it and sew it. Working with a 2-dot bodice, it's a little more tricky. We start by, again, tracing your pattern onto dotted paper. So we have a dotted paper draft to work with. I'm going to start by folding and closing my shoulder dart. I'm going to fold, crease and fold one leg of the dart and fold it over to the other one, and I'm going to pin it closed like this. Pinned my dart closed. Now I create the style line, the yoke style line, and I'm going to use my ruler and a pencil and just draw my yoke style line like that. Now I'm going to add 2 notches and about 1 inch or so. I'm going to put a notch right here, and same thing, about 1 inch, 1.5 inches or so. I'm going to put a notch right here. See, because now we're going to separate the yoke from the body like so. We're going to scotch tape this dart closed, so this becomes one piece yoke. And once we remove this pin or pins, we have this extra material to deal with. Notches serve primarily 2 purposes. One is to indicate seam allowance. The other purpose is to help the seamstress or the factory put this piece or these pieces back together. See, now I'm going to take this amount right here from this notch to this notch, and I'm going to create gathers or shirring. Meaning that when I put this back together, this will be gathered to fit this yoke. So it tells the seamstress that as you start sewing from here, you have to match this notch, continue sewing, and match this notch, and so on. So all this extra fabric will become gathers or shirring to be gathered to fit these 2 notches up here. The thing with yokes is that almost always yokes are cut doubled, which means there's actually 2 yokes. There is the outside yoke, of course, but there's also an inside yoke. You see, these yokes are cut double. There's 2 yokes. There's the outside yoke and the inside yoke. And the beauty of that is that all the seam allowance of the shirt, dress, whatever, is sandwiched between the two yokes. So you have no seam allowance showing. It's all nice and clean on the inside. Okay, so we've been dealing with yokes and variations of yokes and so on. What about the rest of the body? Next class, I'm going to show you how to take that pattern and slash and spread it, add some really cool style lines, and create some exciting designs with it. So stay tuned. See you next class.